მეგობრებო, წარმოგიდგენთ დოქტორ ვერნერ არნოლდს, ჰაიდელბერგის უნივერსიტეტის არაბისტიკის დეპარტამენტის ხელმძღვანელს, წამყვანი არაბისტი გახლავთ, სემიტოლოგი ევროპაში. ჩვენ არაბისტებმა ვიცით, რომელი პროფესორი სადრობელ უნივერსიტეტში მუშაობს, რას იკვლევს და როდესაც ვახსენებთ გერმანიას და გერმანიის სკოლას თანამედროვეს არაბისტიკისას, ყოველთვის ჩვენ წარმოგვიდგება ვერნერ არნოლდი და ოტო იასტროვი. ეს ორი მნიშვნელოვანი მეცნიერი, რომლებიც დღეს თითო განაპირობებენ თავიანთი შრომებითა და გამოკვლევებით არაბისტიკის იმ მიმართულების დონეს, რასაც ქვია არაბული ენათმეცნიერება. ისევე როგორც ცნობილი სკოლები არსებობს თურქოლოგიაში, ირანისტიკაში და თქვენთვის ცნობილი ახლა მეფედაც ძირითადად არიან აღმოსავლეთსადმეების სემიტოლოგი და საბურავად და თქვა ისევე როგორც არის გამორჩეული თურქოლოგიის სკოლა, ირანისტიკის სკოლა, არაერთ ქვეყანაში, გერმანიაში, გერმანია არის ძალიან ძლიერი ტრადიციების მქონე ქვეყანა და ამ სკოლას ყავს დღეს რამდენიმე წარმომადგენელი, მათ შორის ვერნერ არნოლდი გახლავთ მნიშვნელოვანი ფიგურა. ძალიან კარგი ურთიერთობა აქვს საქართველოსთან, არის გამგრძელებელი იმ მნიშვნელოვანი ტრადიციისა, რომელსაც საფუძველი ჩაუყარა გიორგი წერეთელმა, გულისხმობ გიორგი წერეთლის მოღვაწეობას ცენტრალური აზიის არაბული დიალექტების კვლევა-ძიებაში და მის მოღვაწეობას არამეისტიკაში თქვენ მოგეხსენებათ არმაზის ბილინგვა და ეს ქართული დამწერლობის დაკავშირება არამეულის სახეობასთან, რომელიც არმაზული სახით არის ცნობილი გიორგი წერეთლის სახელს უკავშირდება და ასევე ბატონი არნოლდი გახლავთ დიდი მეგობარი იყო акадემიკოსი კონსტანტინე წერეთელი, რომელსაც ძალიან დიდი სახელი ჰქონდა, ისე როგორც გიორგი წერეთელს გერმანიაში და როდესაც ბატონი კოტე ჩადიოდა გერმანიაში და კითხულობდა ლექციებს ჰაიდელბერგის უნივერსიტეტში, ძალიან ბევრი მოდიოდა ის მოსასმინად, ვინაიდან ქართული სკოლა არაბისტიკისა და ეს მიმართულება არის ერთ-ერთი წამყვანი ევროპაში. და აქედან გამომდინარე ძალიან მოხარული ვარ, რომ დღეს ჩვენთან სტუმრად არის პროფესორი ვერნერ არნოლდი. ის წარმოადგენს მოხსენებას, რომელიც პერიფერიულ არაბულს და თანამედროვე ცოცხალ არამეულ დიალექტებს განიხილავს და ვფიქრობ, რომ მისი ეს მოხსენება საინტერესო იქნება როგორც თემატიკის თვალსაზრისით, ისევე განზოგადების შესაძლებლობას მოგცემს ისეთი საკითხებისას, როგორიცაა ენა და დიალექტი. ჩვენთანაც აქტუალურია ეს პრობლემატიკა, რა? ენა და დიალექტი საერთოდ მიმართება რამდენად ვართ მზად იმისათვის, რომ დავარქვათ ქართულ ენებს, ენები თუ დიალექტები და ამაზე მიდის დისკუსია და სიჯავა საქართველოში. არაბული სამყარო თავისთავად არა მხოლოდ არაბული ქვეყანაა, არამედ გაცილებით უფრო მეტი დიალექტები, ათეულობით დიალექტია და ამ ათეულობით დიალექტს აქ გააჩნია ერთი სალიტერატურო არაბული ენა, რომელიც მთელ ამ სამყაროს აერთიანებს. აი ამ საკითხებზე მოგჭედებს. You are welcome and it's I'm honored to open your presentation. We are very happy to have a chance to hear today this society we see now here very well informed about your activities and the results of your research in Arabic dialectology, in Semitic linguistics. So we are also very glad to establish ties and cooperation with the famous University of Heidelberg. We hope that your visit will promote the development of relations between these two universities. We are in comparison with the Heidelberg University, new established university, but one of the best universities, not only in Georgia. So we hope that our students will enjoy to visit Heidelberg and to work under your supervision. Thank you very much, and now we are ready to listen to you.
Thank you very much for the kind invitation to this noble university. It's new, but it had certain advantages. No? It looks much better than everything looks much better than in our old university, which is more than 600 years old already. I'm very sorry that I'm not able to speak your fascinating ergative language. I tried to learn it when I was a student nearly 40 years ago, but it was first of all classical Georgian. We had to read the Bible, the old Georgian Bible, and it's a long time ago, so I've forgotten everything in the past 40 years, so I'm very sorry that I have to speak in English today and not in Georgian. I want to give you some information about the situation of the Arabic language in Turkey and about the situation of the different Christian minorities living in Turkey. I think in Georgia everybody knows that the Christians in the end of the Ottoman Empire suffered a lot, mainly the Armenians, but also some groups of Aramaic-speaking Christians in Turkey. But I will concentrate today on the Arab Christians living until the very day in Turkey. And I will show you first on that map where Arabic is spoken in Turkey. It starts in the west, in the city of Mersin. This is the end of the Mediterranean Sea, the eastern end of the Mediterranean Sea. And Arabic is spoken in Mersin and in Adana, in the province of Adana. Then the majority of Arabic-speaking speakers in the western part of Turkey live in the province of Hatay, which is in that part, and Antakya is the capital city of that province. It's the famous Antiochia, where the first patriarchs of the Christians lived in earlier times, not now. And then we find Arabic dialects in the surrounding of Urfa and far in the east in the provinces of Diyarbakir, of Mardin, of Siirt and Bitlis and Mus and Sirnak. This is the eastern end of the Aramaic-speaking population. East of that part is the Hakkari Mountains. In that part of Turkey, the Christians spoke all Aramaic, the Hakkari Aramaic dialects, but those people all were killed or fled in 1915, and there is not a single Aramaic-speaking Christian anymore living in the Hakkari Mountains, east in the area east of the river Dicle Tigris here. We can divide the Arabic dialects into three different groups. The western group in the provinces of Adana, Mersin and Hatay. This area Adana and Mersin is called Kilikia sometimes, or the Çukurova area in Turkey. The speakers of those dialects in that area, that speak a Syro-Palestinian dialect, the majority of these Arab speakers are Nusayris, which are better known in Europe normally with the name Arabic Alawites. And the most famous speaker of such a dialect is Bashar al-Assad. He belongs to this Nusayri group. And the province of Hatay, where the majority of these Nusayris live, has 1.5 million inhabitants, and about half of this population are Arabic-speaking Nusayris. And there is a minority of Sunni Muslims. They live normally along the border to Syria, some 20 villages, and some of the Sunnis also live in the city of Hatay. And they are about 30,000 speakers today. Yeah. The Sunnis, which is the second largest group, they have about 30,000 speakers. And then there were two small Jewish communities, one in the city of Iskenderun and one in the city of Antakya. The Jewish community in Iskenderun existed only until 1999, and then the last Jew left Iskenderun. And today we have the last Arabic-speaking Jewish community only in the city of Antakya, but I think that the population is now less than 100 speakers. And the Jews are the only Arabic speakers who speak a dialect which is similar to the Syro-Palestinian city dialects. That means they speak nearly like the inhabitants of Halab or Dimashq or Homs. But the dialects of all other minorities are village dialects. That means they have a qaf and not a glottal stop, for example. For the Arabists, they say qal, not al, like the Jews or like the people in Damascus. Those three groups, Nusayris and Muslims and Jews, speak Palestinian Arabic in the Hatay and the Çukurova area. And we have also Christian communities speaking Arabic in that area, but I will tell you more about the Christian in a more detailed context a little bit later. Then we have the dialects in the east of Turkey, in the provinces Diyarbakır, Urfa, Mardin, Siirt, Kozluk, and Sason. And the majority of speakers of those dialects are Sunni Muslims. There are no Nusayris in the east of Turkey, only in the west. There were also Jewish communities in that area, mainly in the province of Diyarbakır and Urfa. But these Jews, Arabic-speaking Jews of that area, they started to immigrate to Palestine already during the British Mandate time, before the State of Israel was founded. But in 1949, when the State of Israel was founded, all the Jewish communities of the Diyarbakır area left Turkey, and they settled down in Israel, mainly in the Jerusalem area. So that today there are no Arabic-speaking Jews in the east of Turkey. Another case was the Jewish community of Nusaybin, which is a city on the Syrian border, opposite of the city of Qamishli in Syria. The Christians of that city of Nusaybin, they fled to Qamishli in 1915 during the genocide. And when the Christian left Nusaybin, also the Jewish community left Nusaybin and settled down in Qamishli in Syria, and they lived in Syria until 1980, and then they emigrated to Israel. So no Jews anymore, but some Christians are still in eastern Turkey, and I will talk about the Christian a little bit later. Then these dialects in eastern Turkey, they all belong to the Mesopotamian dialect group. We have in the west the Syro-Palestinian dialects, which are closely related to the dialects spoken in Syria and Lebanon and Palestine, Israel. And in the eastern group, they belong to the Mesopotamian Arabic dialects. And all of these dialects belong to the so-called Qiltu dialects. I will tell you a little bit more what kind of dialects these are a little bit later. And then we have a group of Bedouin dialects, which are similar to the northern Syrian Shawaya dialects. Those are Bedouins in the northern Syria, and a part of them live in north of the border, mainly in the provinces Urfa and Haran, and some of them also in the province of Hatay. They belong to the different tribes, and they are, of course, all Sunni Muslims. Arabic has probably more than 1.5 million speakers, probably already 2 million speakers in Turkey, but it is not recognized as a minority language in Turkey. That means there are no publication, no books. It's not taught in schools. There's not a single Arabic school. And in the 1980s and 90s, it was even forbidden to speak Arabic in public or to sing Arabic songs. They imprisoned some priests or some sheikhs of the Nusayri population when they used to teach the children Arabic. It was very difficult. It's now a little bit better, but it's anyhow not a recognized and accepted minority language in Turkey. And the Arabs of Turkey are very quiet people. We know the Arabs from other countries as a little bit revolutionary and people who like fighting, but this is not the case with the Arabs in Turkey. They are very quiet, and many people, even in Turkey, do not even know that there are Arabs living in Turkey. What about the Christian now among these Arabs? We know that the Arabs are a very small minority in Turkey, and the Christians are a very small minority among the other Christians, and they are a very small minority among the other Arabic-speaking people in Turkey.
But they are not recognized as minority language, Arabic I mean, in Turkey.
No.
That's why Turkey is not allowed to become the member of the European Council.
Because of Arabic.
European Union.
Yes. No, they have some religious school in Turkey where they teach Fosha for the education of imams. But this is not for the normal population, Arabic-speaking population. It has only religious purpose, and a Nusayri or a Christian has no chance to learn Turkish Arabic in Turkish schools there. Yeah. If we look at this table of Christians living in Turkey, we find 3 different groups of Christians in Turkey. The biggest group are the Armenians. I mean, there were more than 2 million Armenians until 1915 in Turkey, and the majority was killed or fled from Turkey. But still, the Armenians are the biggest Christian community in Turkey, but they do not live in eastern Turkey anymore, where they used to live until 1915 in Diyarbakir, Van, in that area.
They live in Istanbul.
They live in Istanbul, yes. And they are today around 60,000 Armenians. And they, of course, they belong to mainly more than 90% to the Armenian Orthodox Church. And there are two smaller Catholic, Armenian Catholic and Armenian Protestant communities. And they, of course, their language is Armenian as a spoken language, and also the language of the church, of the cult, is Armenian, plus Old Armenian. And the next group is, the next biggest group is the Aramaic speaking group, and they have the most of them belong to the Syriac Orthodox Church, and they live in Tur Abdin, in the Tur Abdin area, which is a mountain area east of Mardin, and some of them are today also in Istanbul and in the province of Siirt. And they speak an Aramaic dialect, different Aramaic dialects. The most widespread today is the Turoyo, the so-called Turoyo dialect, but there were also other dialects spoken in Turkey until 1980 or 19, and until 1915 we had also the Aramaic dialects of the Hakkari Mountains in Turkey. And there are some smaller groups, Syriac Catholic and Syriac Protestant Church, and then we have the Nestorian Church. This church does not exist anymore in Turkey, because all the Arameans of the Hakkari Mountains and some of them in the province of Van were killed or had to leave the country in the time of the genocide, of the Armenian genocide in 1915. This is also true for the Eastern Syriac Protestants, and in some respect for the Chaldeans. The Chaldeans are Nestorians that they converted to the Catholic Church. They are called now Chaldeans, but some of the Chaldeans still live
in Baghdad.
Yeah, in Iraq they are Armenia, but in Turkey you can still find some Chaldeans in Diyarbakir and in Istanbul anyhow. But the majority do not live in Turkey anymore since 1915. And then we have, and they all have Aramaic as the language of the church. Beside the language of the church, they speak a modern Aramaic dialect. Most of them Turoyo, but also other dialects. And some of them speak Arabic, and I will tell you more about the Arabic-speaking Christians belonging to the Syriac Orthodox Church. And some of the Christians in that area already shifted to Kurdish, probably already in the 19th century. But they are a small minority. And then we have the Greek Church. The Greeks, they were a huge population of Greeks until the end of the Second World War, but they were exchanged. I mean, Turks from Greece came to Turkey, and the Greeks left. But it is said that there are still around 10,000 Greeks, Greek-speaking Christians living in Istanbul and Izmir, mainly on the west coast. And among these Greek Orthodox Christians, there are some Greek communities, they speak Arabic as a mother tongue, and they live in Mersin at the Turkish coast and in the province Hatay, and I will tell you more about those Christians in a while.
From which Arabic country they came and settled in?
No, they live always in Antioch.
In Antioch?
Yes, in that area, yes. But those from Mersin, they came originally from the Antioch area, and some of them probably also from other parts in Syria. Yeah.
Antioch was Arabic city?
Yes, it was first a Greek city and then
Arabic.
Yes. Yeah, they shifted to Arabic. Not only in Antioch, but also in Syria and Lebanon, the Greek Orthodox Arabs, they shifted from Greece as a language of the church to Arabic already in the 12th century, as far as I know, very early. And you have only a very few words in the church, Kyrie eleison, which are Greek, but the rest is all Arabic. And when we now look what kind of Arabic of Christians there are in Turkey, we find two types of Christian. One, and those Christians who speak a dialect of the Syro-Palestinian type in the province of Hatay and Adana, and those who speak a Mesopotamian dialect. And they live in the provinces of Diyarbakir and Mardin, and in the province of Sirte they used to live until 1915. And the Christians who speak Syro-Palestinian dialects, they all belong to the Greek Orthodox or a smaller group to the Greek Catholic Church. And the Christians speaking Mesopotamian dialects, they belong to the Syrian Orthodox Church or a smaller part to the Chaldean Church. And the language which is spoken in that area mainly is Syro-Palestinian in the province of Hatay. That means not only the Christians speak a Syro-Palestinian dialect, but all the majority of the rest of the population speaks also a Syro-Palestinian dialect. And with the exception of the Christians in Mersin, where Turkish is spoken. And in the east, the majority of the Christians who live there, they speak Turoyo, or the Christians speak Turoyo, which is a modern Aramaic dialect. And the language of the area is normally Kurdish. In earlier time it was also Armenian in the provinces of Diyarbakir and in Siirt. And the classical language or the language of the church is Arabic for the Christians in the west, on the Mediterranean Sea, and classical Syriac in the east, which is an Aramaic dialect that was spoken in the city of Edessa in the 2nd century. And this dialect is very important for Eastern Christianity because the Bible was translated into that dialect. And there is another big difference between the two groups. The Arabs, the Arabic Christian belonging to the Greek church, they consider themselves as Arab. And they have the self-designation Arab. They say we are Arab. But the Christians who belong to the Syrian Orthodox Church, they do not say that they are Arabs. They speak Arabic and it's their mother tongue. But for them, Arabic is too closely connected with Islam, and they call themselves Syrian, which means Aramaic. They do not speak Aramaic, but they call themselves Syrian, because they have an Aramaic dialect as the language of the church. It makes a big difference. You see sometimes people, they speak a language and do not want to be connected with that people. It's the same.
Like in Malta.
Yes, they don't want to be Arabs. Yes, that's true. And it's the same for the Kurds for the Jews of Kurdistan. The Jews in Kurdistan were the only people who used to speak Arabic in all Kurdistan. The Christians spoke Aramaic, the Kurds spoke Kurdish, and only the Jews spoke Arabic. But the Jews, when they use the word Arab, that means Kurds, but not Jew. That's very interesting.
Very interesting.
Yes. I start now with the Christians of the province of Hatay in Turkey. You see that the majority of that area, the speakers are Nusayris. This is the circle. Every circle means it's a Nusayri village. And the rectangular here, that are the Sunnis here. And these are the Bedouins. And you have the Jewish community in Antakya and in earlier times also in Iskenderun. And the triangle are the Christians. And you see that Christians live in Iskenderun, in the city of Iskenderun, famous harbor city, in the capital city Antakya, and in some villages in Uluçpınar here, and in Samandağ, and Eskikoy, and Tokaçlıköy, and Kamberli, and that's it, I think. And in Yayladağ. The Christians of Yayladağ were the only speakers of Arabic in the city of Yayladağ, because it's a Turkish-speaking city, not an Arabic-speaking city like Antakya or Iskenderun. But today, the last Christians left Yayladağ around 1918. The majority of them live in Berlin now, in Germany. No Christians left in Yayladağ anymore. And also the communities, the Christian communities in the other areas are very small now. I think in some of the villages are no Christian left anymore. I think in Tokaçlıköy and in Altanüzüp probably there are no Christian anymore. The biggest community is today in Samandağ. Here you can probably find until now around 1,000 Christians. So that altogether we will have in Hatay today 2,000 Christians speaking Arabic. You see, this is a very small minority, and that area was once the center of Christianity, and now there are only 2,000 people left in that area.
Are they Rome Orthodox?
They are Rome Orthodox.
Rome
yeah.
Orthodox.
Yeah, Greek Orthodox. Yeah.
All of them.
Yeah, there is a small group of Greek Catholics, but not many. Yeah. I want to give you some examples what the difference is. If you speak about Christian dialects, there must be a difference to the other dialects of the Muslims, of the Nusayris. And you will easily see that the Christians speak something different from the other minorities in that area. You find, for example, in the demonstrative pronoun haya and hawdi among the Nusayris, and hayye and hawwe among the Sunnis, but the Christians have hadi hadol. And you have no difference in the weak verb between the R type and the E type. You have an R type and E type, baka nisi in the other dialects or in other Arabic dialects. But not among the Christians, they have bikinisi. There's no difference anymore. And the ya is preserved. Among the final weak ya is preserved in the Christian dialects, but not in the dialects of the Nusayris and Sunnis, so that they have nisid, but among the Christians, but nisid in the other dialects. And you have a different treatment of the vowel in the second stem. In final syllable, you have fatishtu among the Nusayris and fattashitu among the Sunnis, but fatshittu among the Christians. Then the diphthongs are always preserved in the dialects of the Christians, whereas the Nusairi's have a diphthong only in an open syllable. That means when not another consonant is following in the same syllable. If that is the case, then you have a monophthongization of I to A and Au to O. So the Nusairi's have Bad for house, but Baitan for 2 houses, and Yom for day, but Yauman for 2 days. But the Christian have always the diphthongs, Bait, Baitain, Yaum, Yaumain. In the dialects of the Nusairis and the Sunnis, you find small differences between the dialect of the city of Antakya and the surrounding villages. It concerns mainly the pronunciation of Qaf, which shifted to a K in the dialects of the city. Among the Nusairis, you have Qalb for a city, for a heart, but Qalb for the heart, but Qalb for a dog, and Hallaq and Hallaq. But the Christians have always a Qaf, Qalb in the city and Qalb in the village, and Hallaq in the city and Hallaq in the village. Another in some villages, mainly in the village of Samanda, there are also differences between the Nusairis and the Christians. Though they live together in one small village, they have some differences in their dialect. That has certain sociological reasons, because there is no intermarriage. A Christian cannot marry a Nusairi and so on. So they live in their own quarters, and therefore they could develop their own dialects, something which does not exist, for example, in Germany or in other parts of Europe, and it does not exist in Georgia, but it exists in the Middle East. So you have only one type of verb in the Christian dialects. This is always with an E, whereas the Nusairi have an A and an E to katab and simer, and ktabt and smert, but the Christian have everything with an E. Kitib, simer, ktib, smert. And this is an example of the dialect of Samanda. This dialect has very interesting pausal forms. You find here, for example, the word for 100, mi, is in a non-pausal form, and may, where is it? And may in a pausal form. It's the same word, but this is pausal form and this is not pausal form. It does not work. Sorry, it does not work. Okay, we will.
Wording has to be adjusted, maybe.
What?
Wording has to be adjusted, maybe. So that could be the problem.
But we had it. Sound? It's okay, it's full sound here.
Az mikrofoni wyłączył czat.
Я даже стал, я там дружил, а потом от тебя нашу рассказал. Где-то там же,
أنا ولدت بالسويدة بأنطاكيا في 1967. الوالد اسمه حنا، لقب العائلة باب. في كان فرصة توتيتين خلق له. أنا جورج بال. أنا ولدت بالسويدة بأنطاكيا بال 1967. الوالد اسمه حنا، لقب العائلة بال. ستي هي كانت من بيت صغير، وجدي كان من بيت فرسة. بال 1933 خلق الوالد. بال 57 صار مختار هو عنا بالضيعة. بعدين قام غير لقب العائلة صياره بال، صار لقب عائلتنا نحن بال، لأنه جدي كان من بيت فرسة وستي كانت من بيت صغير. الوالد صار له عنا هونيك 24 سنة هو مختار. من قديم قبل ما يصير مختار هو كان حنا مدني، هو كان مختار، وأبوي كان تحت إيده أعزى. هالزلمة مرض ومات. بعد ما مات هالزلمة صار أبوي محله مختار بالضيعة عنا. صار له 24 سنة طلع صار أمكلة. وهلق الوالد بعد الأمكلة تبعه مثلا داوم المختاري تبعه. نحن هونيك أول واحد بين المسيحي عنا أبوي، يعني مسيحتنا كلها بتعرف هي. أبوي جاب أول كاميون، هذا كان دوج بال 1963 جابوا لعنا. اشتراني وقتها ب50,000 ليرة. يعني أبوي هيك بيحكي لنا كان أبوي تاجر بالليمون، تاجر بالبندورة، تاجر، كان تاجر الوالد من قديم. اشتغل هو عمه. ستة كانت من عائلة يعني حال وقت كيس، وجدي كان فقير، كنت لفت بالكنيسة. على ما تحكي لنا ستة.
It's enough. But you heard probably that he said ishtarahni. He bought it. It is the suffix of the third person singular masculine, which is yes. You would think it's starani, he bought me, but it's not the case. It means he bought it. This is the suffix. Very archaic because the old interdentals, they are preserved. They have for 3 thathe, for gold dhahab, and for nihid warab. And these dialects are spoken mainly by Muslims, and there were also some Christians spoke this dialect, mainly in the city of Mardin. There are still a few families there. And there are 2 villages where still Christian live, speaking a Bilta dialect. This is Azeh, where 7 families live today, and Tbilisi, only 1 family left. And they have the peculiarity that in those dialects, the only dialects where this interdental in this Mardin group is not preserved are the dialects of the Christians of Azeh and Tbilisi. I will tell you more about these dialects in a while. And then we have the Diyarbakir group, and the dialects of this group, the speakers of this group were all Christian and Jews. There was not a single Muslim spoke that kind of dialect. But as I already told you, the Jews all left Diyarbakir, and Christians, we find Christians today, only a few Christians, a few old people in the city of Diyarbakir. Some of them are refugees from Ka'biyeh in Karabakh. There were villages that were destroyed in the Armenian genocide, but some people fled to Diyarbakir. And we know the name of a few other villages, but we have no information about the dialects of those Christians. The same is true for the villages of Mansouriya, Isfis, Hosare, villages that were destroyed in the genocide time in 1915, and we have no information. And the same, and then we have the Si'irt dialect east of Mardin, where we have labiodentals instead of interdentals. Fafe for 3, Vahab for gold, and Warab, he beats. And there was a Christian community in Jizre. We have a few information. Otto Jastrov found 1 person who survived that genocide in Beirut. And we know that there was a Christian community in Si'irt, but we know nothing about those dialects. And east of that northeast of that area in Kosluk and in Sason, the interdentals shifted to the sibilants. There you have Sase, Zahab and Zorab. But the speakers of those dialects are all Muslims.
The Sirt was investigated by Saxon, yes? Boy Saxon, Sirt.
Yes, he has an article on it, but on the Muslim dialect.
Muslim.
Yes. There are a lot of Muslims in Sirt and Kosluk, many speakers. They are not in these dialects are not in danger, but the Christians, they disappeared there.
Disappeared.
Yes. Nobody left. If we look now to the Mardin group, we can see that in the villages, the villages and the city dialects are nearly the same. And the Christians and the Muslims in the city of Mardin speak nearly the same dialect. You see the interdentals are preserved. Here is a small difference between city and village because they have Haye in the city but Hadi in the villages. And they have the interdentals, Tathe and Dahab and Darab, both of them. And the only two Christian villages within this Mardin group, Qillith and Azeh, they have completely different forms. First of all, Qillith has labiodentals instead of interdentals, Fafe, Vahab, Warab. And Azeh has sibilants, Sase, Zahab, Zorab. And they have completely different demonstrative pronouns. Hava, Havi, Zia, Zia. Yeah. And what we have to do now, we have to explain why the Christians in that dialect group have so different forms.
Yes.
And the reason, before we start, I want to listen a little bit of a Qiltu dialect, a Christian Qiltu dialect.
يوم الواحد أنا وخوجاز رحنا النيتشير أكرم الجوهري. خوجاز حطفه كان بيت قطاش وأنا دليته مقابل كافلي بلكة حطيته في كوزكي عتيقة وكيجي شوية هواء. أنا صليته حجلاتي وخوجات الصلاة حجلاته وقعدنا. حجلتي ساحت جاء حجل قتلته بس ما قمت من أصابتي كيكو حجل له. أنا طلعته تحتي كيصير خشت خشت. الحشيش فيه نص متر وبوش سكيكو في الكوزكي. كتلخ صار خشت خشت. رفعته ساكي طلعته ما عرفش. كتلخ قعدته زبطته نيشان تضرب في الحجل. كتلخ صار خشت 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 تحت ساقي بس أنا كلبس جزمي كيف زعمل حيال جزمة لاستيك. طلعته بجي تحت ساقي أشا طلع لحية عمياء بقرون برج كوفية بوش قليل بجي أبيض. وقت القريتوها خليته الجفتة ونطيته من الكوزكي. هربته طلعته خلفي ماكو حي. رديته هيدي حلقته ايدي سم الجفتة في الفزعة جريتوها واخذت الجفتة حطيته لها سشمة نهباب وضربته قتلته الحي. وقت ضربته قتلته الحي.
This is a Qiltu dialect, the Darabtu, and they have until now Ra'a for to see Araituwa, I saw them. Yes, I want to explain why I think what happened with this dialect, with this Christian dialect. If we look at the map once more, we see that here is Midyat. This is the most western Aramaic dialect, Turoyo. Yeah, this is the most Western Aramaic dialect, Turoyo, and this is the Tur Abdin, where Aramaic is spoken. All the Christians in that area speak Aramaic. And Azekh and Qilith, they are on the fringe of this Aramaic area. And here east of that area, there is Jizre, where the Se'irt dialects are spoken, and in the north there is Kosluk Sasson, where the Kosluk Sasson dialects are spoken. And now if we compare the Kosluk Sasson dialects and the Se'irt dialects with the Mardin dialects and with Qilith and Azekh, we see that the dialect of Qilith is not similar to the dialect of Mardi, but similar to the dialect of Se'irt. They have Hava, Ava, Havi, Avi, and Azekh has Zia, Zaik, like Kosluk, and Sasson, Aza, Azi.
How can you explain?
I will do it in 1 minute. And you see that the Martin group, except Qilith and Azekh, have Thate, Dhahab, Dharab, but Qilith has Fafe, Vahab, Vara, like Se'irt, like the Muslims in Se'irt, and Azekh has Sase, Zahab, Zara, like the Muslims in Kosluk and Sasson. And I think that these Christians, they lived in earlier times more far in the east, in the Se'irt group and in the Kosluk Sasson group. And when the Christians became a very small minority among all these Muslims, they left this Muslim area and settled down near to the Christian Aramaic speaking in the Tur Abdin. And that is the reason why these different dialects are spoken there. And that shows that we can use dialectology until now to explain migration from one place to the other.
First, I thought first when you said that maybe tribal differences was the reason and similarities.
But they are Christian, they are no tribes.
Yes. They are not tribes.
Yes, yes. No, I think they immigrated from the east and left the Muslim area and settled down among their Christian brothers and sisters. That is the reason, I think. Thank you very much for your interest. Didi Madloba.
Very interesting diversity of the dialects and languages we have in this territory. So I think that there must be linguistic contacts as well.
Yeah, of course.
My question will be afterwards. Shekitchevit about that's with Shekitchevit. Okay. About linguistic contacts.
I have
a question. So I'm sure it's a very rare case. So in case of Syrian dialects, in a small little area, which is called Tbilisi.
Yes, I've been there.
Yes, I discovered this small little difference, which is absolutely, I think it's astonishing because it has him, han, and him as a personal pronominals.
Yes.
Yes, in plural, third person, singular, and so masculine and feminine. So I wonder if you have such type of things in Turabdin, for example, all these areas, all these diversities, all these varieties. If there is something kind of reduplication of roots, for example.
No, Hinhan, Hinhin is, I think, it's only in Taibet al-Imam. Yes. If you look at Binch, that's the dialect in Atlas of Syria, where he registers all kinds of forms. There are many Aramaic forms, Hinnun and Hinnon and Hinnin and Hinnin and Hinnun, which is all Aramaic. But a reduplication of that is not attested elsewhere. It's only Taibet al-Imam. Yeah. Yeah. But what you have is, in many dialects, the ha of the third person is added to the second person. Hint, hintu, hinti, instead of int, inti, inti. That's very common in Syria and also in the Antiochia area. So, and it is probably very old because it's also in Aramaic. In the Toroyo they say hat hatu, for example, instead of at atu, they say hat hatu. And also Western Neo-Aramaic, they say hach, hachchen with an ha. And there are also dialects in which the a of the first person is attached to the third person. They say ahu and ahi instead of hu and he.
So it takes kind of, how can you say, it's added as a prefix, right?
Yeah.
It's a pronominal suffix, hu and ha.
Yeah.
So it's added as a prefix, right, for the second person, if I understood correctly.
No, I think it's only from the paradigm, because they all start with ha, huwa, hiya, and so on, and they added all the ha also to ha, hint, hinti, hintu.
Yes,
yeah.
So it's like prefix, so it's used like prefix, let's say.
That's not really a prefix, it's only assimilation or paradigmatic leveling.
Oh, okay, I understand.
Yeah.
I have information that many historians leave Turkey for Germany. Isn't so? And therefore there are many empty villages with historical places.
Then historians of Hakkari,
yes,
they first of all they lived a certain time in a refugee camp, in refugee camps near Mosul and Baghdad, but some of them already fled to the United States and to Canada, and then they were brought during the mandate. The French went out to Syria, and they were settled down along the Khabur River in northern Syria, near Qamishli. And they founded around 20 villages there, where they live until now. But in recent years, because the river is very dry, this Khabur River, many of these Arab historians settled down in Haram, and some of them also in Damascus, and some of them went to Beirut, and a few of them came also to Germany. But they are a minority among the Arameans in Germany, because the majority of Arameans in Germany, they come from the Tur Abdin mountain, from Midyat, and from that area. Yes, we have around now 60,000 Arab. Around half of them live in Germany, and another half in Sweden, in a city called Södertälje. And there are smaller groups in Belgium and in the Netherlands and in Austria and also in France. And there are east of some Chaldean villages east of the Tigris, 5 or 6 villages, Besbin, Harbole, Ishi, some small villages with a Chaldean population. They also survived the genocide. And they came in the 1980s when the war started between the Kurdish independent movement and the Turkish army. They fled and they went to Paris. They live, nearly all of them live in the surroundings of Paris today. Yeah.
Thank you.
Well, so we have this diversity of dialects, and there is some directions. There are some directions. The oldest forms preserved in these dialects may be also fixed, as well as internal development of the dialects. The oldest forms may be preserved of the proto-classical or classical Arabic, and internal development when now they are isolated from Arab world. Because of course they have contacts with Syrian communities and it is not like Central Asian Arabic dialects, almost isolated dialects, but it must be for 50 years, for one century, the internal development of these dialects. And we have also very good material for the research of linguistic contacts between Semitic and Turkish languages, as well as Aramaic dialects also are in contact with this Arabic dialect. So if we will also add to this extra linguistical development and influence, so we have very interesting linguistic diversity and great project for the tendencies of the development, not only the Arabic dialects, but also for the development in general, Semitic material, Semitic languages, and not only the Semitic languages. But I am interested if you have, if you focus your interest to the formation of the words and formation of the Arabic forms. Maybe these dialects are going to become the endangered dialects, because if there is the influence of Turkish language and they have not opportunities to develop this linguistic material, maybe they are taking from Turkish language the words they could form in their native Arabic or Aramaic languages. Maybe you will speak about it.
Yeah. First of all, concerning contacts to the Arabs in Syria, I gave you that map once more. If you see in that map that here in all that part there is not a single Arabic village, except a few Christians. They lived in this Turkish city of Yaylada. And you see that here along the Turkish border only Sunni villages are. The reason is that the Turks, when they took the Hatay in 1937, they moved all the Nusayri people from that area to the north, and they settled down Turks, some of them from the Balkan, in that area in order to avoid contact to the Nusayris in Syria. So their contact was not so very strong as we think, but it is true that the Nusayris, and also they live in the Çukurova in Adana, in that area. All the people younger than 40 years, they do not speak Arabic anymore. They moved to Turkish. But this is not the case in Hatay, because Antakya and Iskenderun are big Arabic-speaking cities. It's not so easy to kill a dialect when you have more than half of the population. I mean, more than half of the population speak Arabic in Hatay. But this is not the case in the Çukurova, where you have only a small minority. Adana is a city of 1.5 million Turks, and there are probably 50,000 Arabs. This is nothing. I mean, it's in this case, of course, it will disappear. In 20, 30 years, there will be no Arabic anymore in Hatay and in Antakya. But in eastern Turkey and also the Bedouins, there are 100,000 of Muslims who speak Arabic. Their dialects will survive, but not the Christian. I think they have no future there in eastern Turkey. There are only a few hundred.
But they have not their Arabic schools.
No, no Arabic schools. No.
No, the language policy of Turkey is not in accordance with the European Charter of the...
Yes. Yeah, I mean the Christians, the Syrian Orthodox Christian, they can go to the monastery to learn Syrian, Old Aramaic, but Arabic is, nobody is interested in Arabic there.
As well as there is no university or department in the Turkish universities in this area.
There is now an Aramaic department, Syriani department at the University of
No, I mean to study in Arabic or in Arabic.
In Arabic, no. This is not the case. But they have a Syriani department now in Mardin.
But in Irbil they can study in Kurdish language because the Irbil University of Irbil is Kurdish university.
Yes. I mean there is no Arabic anymore.
There is any Arabic college or secondary school or gymnasium or university in this area.
Yeah, this is that. Concerning the language contact, I mean the language contact in Hatay is recently because it's not it's only since 1937 it is part of Turkey, and before it belonged to the French mandate, and there are some modern words, of course. They use emekli, they use for retired, for example, in that text, and some other words. Yes, I mean these words, they will increase. These Turkish words, they will increase. In Eastern Turkey, the situation is different because Turkish was not a spoken language in Eastern Turkey. There was Armenian in earlier times, and there was Kurdish. They were the strong languages, and you can find a lot of Kurdish words in the Arabic dialects. But Turkish is only new. Some words of modern technology or of modern administration, they are Kurdish. They are Turkish, but otherwise loans are taken from Kurdish, not from Turkish.
You mentioned Bashar Assad.
Yes.
About Alawites and when Hafez al-Assad was the president of Syria, his family is Alawite family, it's known. What's your opinion? Is it a direction of Islam or it's separate religion?
Yeah, this is a very difficult question. I mean, I spoke with many Nusayri families and also with many sheikhs. I had hundreds of interviews with Nusayris.
It's so different from Islamic law.
Yeah. I mean, there is not a single authority like a pope among these Nusayris. They have the sheikhs, and every sheikh is independent and has his own community. And if you talk with the sheikhs, you will find that every sheikh has a different opinion. And they are sheikhs, they say that they are part of Islam. And there are sheikhs, they say that they existed long before Islam came into being and that they have nothing to do with Islam.
Yes.
It is insofar not a Shia group as they use the Quran only for argumentation against Sunnis, not for religious purposes. They have no fasting period, no Ramadan. They drink alcohol. They use alcohol even in their rituals. They have a sacred wine like in a Christian church.
Yes.
They do not go to Mecca, no pilgrimage to Mecca, and they believe in the so-called tajil, which is in Fushat Aqamus, in reincarnation, but they call it tajil. They say Jayalt, I was reborn.
And they pay zakat, maybe.
They pay zakat to holy places. Yes, no, but not to a mosque. They have no mosque. And all the religious ceremonies take place in the house of the sheikh, not in a special building or not in a kind of mosque or something. And so, and the name Alawi was not used. It came into being only 100 years ago or something like that. Before they were only Nusayri. And Nusairi is a very old Canaanite name. It's pre-Aramaic and it's used also for the Christians, Nasara in Arabic and in Hebrew, Nasrani. And it's also used for the Mandaeans in South Iraq. They call themselves Nasuraye. And this is a very old name, and it's of pre-Christian times. And therefore I think people who call themselves Nusairi cannot be a Muslim group. But I mean, the problem is when they say that they are not Muslims, they have problems with the Sunni majority. So they use the name Alawi to pretend that they are Muslims.
That's why the Saudi Arabia is fighting now against Assad's family and its government. Yes,
I think it's
one of the reasons. Maybe
I think it's in what?
No, nothing.
I asked is it right or not?
بس أنت نصيرية؟ لا.
She's Syria born. Syria.
Yeah. I mean, the problem is that the Sunnis, of course, they know that they are not Muslims. Even if they say we are Alawites, the Sunnis, they know that they are not Muslims.
They are not Muslims.
Yes. Everybody knows it, but nobody wants to say it. That's the problem.
Alawites mostly are in Tartus and Lazikia, or only in
in the so-called Jabal Ansari.
Yes.
Yeah, the Jabal Ansari. Yeah. Between the Lebanese border, even in Lebanon, in northern Lebanon, there are some until Iskenderun in the north, and there is even in some villages. There is also one village in Israel near the Lebanese border. This is the southernmost Alawi village. Yes, they have some similarities with the Druze.
Maybe
at least the belief on the reincarnation is in common.
Maybe 500,000 or more.
What?
Alawites.
No, more. In Turkey alone, there's 750,000.
More.
750,000.
No, not the Turkish and Kurdish Alawites. They are a lot. Only the Arab Alawites. They are
Arab Alawites.
but because they are something completely different. The Kurdish and the Turkish Arab, they believe on something else. But the Arab Alawis are around 750,000 in Turkey, and in Syria they say 5% of the population, which should be around 1 million or a little bit more.
Last year the book was published in English by the US scholar by the title Chinese as a Minority Language.
I think it is a minority language in Georgia.
We have one of the minority languages, now we have Chinese. So the language is like a human body. It's developing, and has history and followers and enemies and friends. So we have to express our gratitude. Have you any questions? Please.
I wonder what's your opinion about the origin of ethnonyms, Cult and Arabic.
Cult and Aram.
Arab in Arabic.
Cult.
Cult.
Chaldeans.
Yes.
Ah, yes. No, the Kalda, that were a people in Old Babylonian time, and but they disappeared. They were not existent anymore. And when the first Nestorian moved to the Catholic Church, they were looking for a name for those people, how to call these people. And as the Christians, the Nestorians used the old name Ashurian for themselves, they also were looking for an old name from Babylonian time, and they found the name Chalda, and therefore they used the name Chaldeans. But it's not an old name. Came into being when they changed the...
It's rather old name, still is in Lazistan, Chaldea.
In Lazistan?
Yes, at back. Lexi, Lazistan still is Chaldea.
Aha.
Greek sources also is Chaldea.
Aha. But they are Laz, these people.
Yes.
And they call themselves Chalda.
Yes.
Chaldeans.
But they probably used this name since long time.
Yes.
But this is probably a coincidence. I mean, there is Iberia in Spain,
Yes.
Iberia in this.
Despite all this, they have relations.
Yeah.
And does the ethnic Arab goes back to Aram?
Arab?
Yes.
No. I don't think that it goes back to Aram. I think Aram has something to do with mountains. Aram.
Yes.
And I think that our friend Jan Retzer is right with his theory.
Yes.
That the Arabs were worshippers of the goddess of Allat, which is the Venus in the west, and the Venus is called in Aramaic Aruba. Or in Old Semitic language, the name of Venus is Aruba.
Sure.
And the Arameans, they use the day of the Venus, which is Friday. They use it. They use the word Arufta or Arufta for Friday. It's used until now in Aramaic. It means it's the day of the Venus. And the Arabs, they were worshippers of this goddess, and they used Arabic, the Fusha, for language of that Lat cult. And I think Arab has something to do with Venus. It means worshippers of Venus or something like that.
There is very famous port in Syria, Al-Laziqiyah.
Yes, this
I don't know the etymology of
Laziqiyah. This Greek.
Yes, Greek. But it's very close to Lazika. Laz.
Yeah, no. It's Laodicea. It's all Greek.
Yes, it's all Greek.
Many of the cities in Syria and Palestine were founded by the Greeks.
Yes.
Is Iskenderun, and Antakya is Greek, and Latia is Greek, and Tripoli is Greek, and Nablus is all Greek. They founded many cities there.
You know, in Syria, between Aleppo and Halab and Homs, in the area of Laziqiyah, there is a village, Meskhita. Have you been Meskhita? Meskhita.
Meshkheta. Yeah.
Yes, yes, Meskhita.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this has something to do with Saqi, no?
The Syrians usually they don't say Meskhita, they say Meskhita, and it was very strange for me.
You thought it's Meskheta, the old capital city.
Hittites were in Syria, you know. Hittites also.
Hittites?
Yes.
Yes, in northern Syria, yes, of course. But I mean, you know, there is the Georgians. They went to Syria and Palestine. As far as I remember, in Jerusalem is an inscription from the 6th century or Georgian inscription.
Yes.
So they have
the excavations
5th or 5th century, a very early Georgian inscription.
Virginia Corbos excavations.
Yeah.
And the shifting in higher this but Hadri are this kind of shifting in other dialects into dental.
Yeah, but not in dentals to...
No. Haya, but Christians pronounce hadi.
Hadi, yeah. Hadi, yeah.
This kind of shifting.
No, this is not a regular sound shift. This is only a difference. A shift from da to ya does not exist. No.
No. Yeah. Haya is Christians pronounce hadi.
Yes.
Yes.
But this is not that a da shifted to a ya. This is only the word is different.
Yeah.
Not every da shifted to a ya or in contrary. No. Yeah.
Is the other one.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you see, for example, you have Heidi in Lebanon, Heidi with a ya, and then when you drop the d, then you have Hai. But and other dialects have had hadi or hadi. But this is not a regular sound shift. This is only a word difference.
I have a question.
Please.
Please, can you say if there are any influences of Hebrew in the speech of the Jewish population, Jewish community? You mentioned them.
Yes.
But they are Arabic speaking now.
Yes. Yes, they speak Arabic, but all Arabic and Arabic-speaking Jews, and also the Aramaic-speaking Jews, and I think all Jews over the world, the German-speaking Jews, and probably the Georgian-speaking Jews, they use the Hebrew vocabulary, especially for religious terms, Sukkot and the names of the festival, of course, of course, and they say Shabbat and so on. All of them have a certain Hebrew vocabulary. So also the Jews in Iskenderun and Antakya.
Georgian Jews, they have the stress on the last syllable.
Yes. This is the same in Neo-Aramaic. The Jews have the stress in Neo-Aramaic at the final syllable, the Christian, the pre-final syllable. Only one village, one Christian village with stress on final syllable. The already extinct dialect of Nahso. Yes.
So they use the Jewish language, Hebrew, for religious purpose.
Yes, of course.
They preserve this language.
Yes, they use it in the synagogue for the prayer, of course. But in normal speech, they use some Turkish bracha for the blessing of the wine. They say bracha, and they say chacham for the rabbi, and all kinds of...
in vocabulary, there will be
the
loan words.
Yes, I think this is everywhere in the world, because it is so closely connected with the religion. Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other question? Well, thank you very much.
That was my pleasure.